All right. Welcome. We are going to learn now. Hope I'm sitting in the right spot here. We are going to learn now the Dvar Malchus, which we usually learn Wednesday night. We're going to do it Tuesday night because tomorrow night we're going to be celebrating in the Beis Hamikdash. Maybe even while we're learning today. So at least we should be already psyched up with Mashiach so that we can really celebrate L'chaim. Where's this Hardik? Anyways, we are holding over here in Perek Vav. So I do want to mention this shir should be l'schus, an anonymous, who's sponsoring this class because of all the inspiration about Mashiach that he's been getting from this class. So an appreciation of that. So thank you. May the Eibush to bless you and your mishpacha. A big mazel tov on your new yingele. Much yishureizim, a toivel achupel amasim tovim, and a lot of emes chassidische Yiddish nachas. Okay, yishureizim and good health. Much hatzlacha, bracha, and alles. We're holding over here Sivav. So over here in this talk, which came out to be Shabbos Tisha B'Av, the Rebbe is blowing Tisha B'Av out of the park. He's basically blasting the darkness of Tisha B'Av out of the window, and he's presenting us with the pnimius of Tisha B'Av in all its glory. Of course, in a year that Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos, that's more pronounced. But I think this year, because it's Tafshin Pei and everything that's been happening, already indicating the Geula, we can kind of say that even though Tisha B'Av is coming out on a Thursday and a Wednesday night, it's already similar to the Tisha B'Av the Rebbe was talking about when it came out on Shabbos. The last thing we discussed, the Rebbe in Sif Hey, was that when Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos, then the fast gets pushed off to Sunday. So there is an Inyan of the 9th and the 10th. Tisha B'Av is observed both on the 9th and on the 10th. And therefore he draws a comparison between that and Yom Kippur. Because Yom Kippur, the Gemara says that if you eat in the 9th, it's considered as if you fasted the 9th and the 10th. So he went and he showed the parallel between Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur, why they're so similar to each other, how they connect, primarily via the 15th of Av, Chamishasa B'Av, which the Mishnah compares to Yom Kippur, as both of them being the highest Yom Tovim possible. And the Rebbe explains how the 15th of Av is really just the revelation of what Tisha B'Av is all about. On a regular year, Tisha B'Av is still dark, but Pnimi is Tisha B'Av is also has this great Mashiach light, the light of the third Beis Hamikdash. It's just concealed. It's revealed every year on the 15th of Av. When Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos, since the negativity of Tisha B'Av is removed, and all you see is the pnimius of it is the same idea of Yom Kippur. So the fasting, so the 2 days, the 9th and the 10th, could be compared to each other. But then he says in the Gavaldig Inyan, he says that hopefully we have a munah that Mashiach is coming on the 9th of Av, on that Shabbos that the Rebbe was talking about. And if that would be the case, if he would come on the 9th and the Av, then the way we would have fasted the 9th and the 10th is not through fasting. The 9th is Shabbos, so we're feasting. The 10th, Mashiach is going to be here. We're going to be celebrating the Chanukah Sabayis of the building of the third Beis Hamikdash. We're not even going to be fasting. So it's going to be through feasting, but it's going to have the Maila of fasting. What's the Maila of fasting? The Maila, the quality, Maila means the quality. It's going to have the quality of Olam Haba, which we're learning actually in Rambam today. The significance of Olam Haba, that there has no eating or drinking. Rambam learns that there's no body there at all. Chassidus accepts the opinion that there is a body, and yet the body will be able to be sustained directly by divinity. And there won't be eating and drinking. The Rebbe said there'll be both milas. There'll be the quality of not eating and drinking, and there'll be the quality of eating and drinking, both of them together. Anyways, this is really, to go and to take Tisha B'Av, 9th and 10th, and to turn it into Yom Kippur of 9th and 10th, No one has ever done that in the past. That's something that we're spoiled. Don't realize the Gavaldikeit of this. In any case, we're holding Sivav. So now he adds, he says that in the Kviyas of this year, again, the Rebbe is talking in a Kviyas meaning when the calendar is set up in a way that Tisha B'Av fell on Shabbos, and that would mean that the 17th of Tammuz, which is the beginning period of this dark period of the year, the 3 weeks, also starts on Shabbos. So in this case, you'll have the beginning of the 3 weeks on Shabbos, and you'll have, because the same day of the week, that is the 17th of Tammuz, is always Tisha B'Av. It's exactly 3 weeks later, 3 weeks apart. So when Tisha B'Av falls out on Shabbos and the fast gets pushed to Sunday, Shavasa B'Tammuz also falls out on Shabbos and the fast gets pushed off on Sunday. The mile of that is that both the beginning of the 3 weeks and the end of 3 weeks begin with Shabbos, which Shabbos, as we said earlier, exposes the pneumius, the inner dimension, the root of it, the inner nucleus of the day, which as we learned last week is a Yom Ratzain Hashem, is only good, is only full of light, is only full of Mashiach. He says then what that does is that it's not only impacting the day, but it takes the entire 3 week period and it changes its identity. The identity of the 3 weeks in a year, when it starts on Shabbos and ends on Shabbos, is that you don't really see the negativity. It's really just exposes the 3 weeks for what they really are. And that is, it's not what we call Talasa de Perenusa. Usually 3 weeks is called 3 troublesome weeks. It's not 3 weeks of trouble. On the contrary, it's since Shabbos is there, it's a time of Oynik Shabbos. And so the Rebbe says an interesting thing. So it impacts the 3 weeks. It reveals that the 3 weeks is not dark. It says, and just to see the thinking over here is Gavaldi. Chas v'shalom. Oh, if Mashiach did not come on that day, Shabbos Tisha B'Av. No, I made a mistake. That's not what he's saying. He just establishes that if it starts in the 3 weeks and it ended at 3 weeks, so the beginning and the end. But you might argue and say, okay, it's ending on Shabbos, but it's not really ending on Shabbos. It's ending on Sunday. Because if you're not fasting on Shabbos, you're pushing it off on Sunday, so it's ending on Sunday. But he says, well, since we're waiting for Mashiach to come every second, so tomorrow, Sunday, is also not going to be a fast. We have to learn from the Rebbe. These sikhs are very important. In addition to the actual learning, you just have to learn from the start. You have to learn how to live your life. To live your life that we will not have Tisha B'Av this year. That's the way. And those that are being all worried, relax. Corona, we do fast, we don't fast. We have to live our life as if there won't be Tisha B'Av. There will be Mashiach revealed. We won't have Tisha B'Av. We're going to celebrate. That's our Ramuna. And then you see it from the Rebbe over here. He says, because since we hope that tomorrow, for sure, the Rebbe says Mashiach will be here. We won't have to fast. And then he adds, in a parenthesis, he says, and even if chas v'shalom, Mashiach will be delayed, even if, God forbid, Mashiach will be delayed, and therefore Sunday will be a fast, so then we do have a negativity associated with the 3 weeks, not just with the 3 weeks, with the culmination of the 3 weeks, but the Rebbe says no. Because then technically the fast is taking place, but it's not taking place in the 3 week zone. So therefore the 3 weeks itself has already been redeemed by the 2 Shabbosim at the beginning and the end. The fact that there is going to be a fast day, Chas v'Shalom, if Mashiach doesn't come, and that fast day is going to take place on Sunday, since it's already the 10th of, which is outside of the parameters of the 3 weeks, of the time period of 3 weeks, it will not in any way anymore dampen these 3 weeks and change the character of the 3 weeks. These 3 weeks have already been exposed for what they are. It's not a time of trouble. V'yesh lo yimar, and he says, and so what then are the 3 weeks? Okay, so if it's not troublesome, what are they? They are only the pneumius of what the 3 weeks are. What's the premise of the 3 weeks? The premise of the 3 weeks correspond to the level, a very high level of divine revelation, called the 3 Moichin. It's explained in a Maimer from Reb Hillel of Parish. Isa b'psikta de Reb, b'psikta, that's what it says. It's a Maimer. We learned it. You can look on Maayon.com. I taught this Maimer. Fascinating discourse from Reb Hillel of Parish, which the Rebbe says over here, the Yesh Loimar, that it's really a Maimer of the Tzemach Tzedek. Reb Hillel is just the conveyor of this Maimer, but it's really from the Tzemach Tzedek. Over there he explains the whole system, a fascinating explanation on the whole sequence of 3 weeks, 7 weeks of comfort, and 4 weeks of the month of, and then Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the whole, how it works. And he explains that the 7 weeks of comfort that follow Tisha B'Av, they correspond to the 7 emotions, 7 midot. 3 weeks correspond to the very high level, the 3 moichin, Chachma, Bina, and Das, which until Mashiach comes, the moichin Chabad have never really truly been completely revealed. When God engaged us, and all divine revelation that we primarily internalized and experienced through the first Beis HaMikdash and second Beis HaMikdash, was primarily from the 7 emotions, not from the 3 intellectual elements. That's why when we went into Eretz Yisroel, we only took possession of the land of the 7 nations, because our main avodah was the avodah hamidos, the avodah of our emotions, and being that our avodah was the avodah of the midos, the purification of our midos, of our emotion, that enables us to connect to which level of the divine, also the 7 emotions. The 3 intellectual elements, that avodah is going to be only after the days of Mashiach. And as seen from the fact that after Mashiach comes, we are going to, Eretz Yisrael is going to be larger. Hashem is going to give us a land of the 10 nations. In addition to the 3 nations, he's going to add a land of the in addition to the 7, he's going to add another 3, which he promised Avram Avinu, which was never fulfilled. And as the Pasuk says, Yarchav Hashem es Gevuchav, Hashem is going to expand your land, referring to, as Rashi explains, the 3 extra lands that are going to come. The Rambam says it, one of the proofs from the Torah that Mashiach, in the coming of Mashiach, and Hashem says that you have to add to the mitzvah of Ir Miklat, you add another 3 lands. So those 3 lands correspond to these lands are not just a dead land. They are vibrant. Eretz Yisrael is a living land. It's called Eretz HaChayim. It's a land full of vibrancy. And if there's 3 more added, means that in those 3 lands, it's going to reveal itself great intellectual light. The lights of the Ebershter's Mochen, which are higher than the Midas. So that is what's going to be revealed after Mashiach comes. During the time of Golus, during this 3-week period, these 3 moichen are present, it's active, but because it's aloof and withdrawn, it creates a great darkness. As the rest of the year, we're completely out of the frequency of these 3. It's outside, it's beyond our experience, beyond that, so it doesn't impact us. In these 3 weeks, we come close to it, but since we're not yet ready for the revelation of it, I'm talking about an ordinary year, regularly, when we have a dark 3 weeks. So that very lofty power of the 3 moichin causes and impacts the darkness and the golus and the suffering and the pain, similar to the idea that the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, that all suffering comes from Alma Diskastia, comes from a higher level, Yudke, which is also Shaykh to the Moichin, to Chachma and Bina, to levels that are higher. Ashrei HaGever Shetisren Yudke. How fortunate is the person. Hashem should protect us all from this good fortune. But it says, fortunate the person that encounters this deeper intimacy with God, where God is engaging them from a more mystical, transcendental place of the Ebershter's Moichin. But being that we're not yet ready to appreciate and to understand that it comes down over here, it translates as suffering. So similar to that is this idea of the 3 weeks coming from a very lofty place. And it's an incredible mashal, which Rabbi Parich explains how it works. Example of a teacher, where a teacher is teaching a student, and when they have a new epiphany in their mind, the gilui of the moichen, because they haven't yet fully absorbed it to teach it to their student, they disengage from the student. So a distance is created between teacher and student because of the new revelation. So the gilui hamoichen, the revelation of the moichen to the teacher, the new insight to the teacher, is actually causing a darkness to the student, which is the darkness of this 2,000-year exile, this new revelation. And every year we get burnt by it in these 3 weeks. Oh, that's when the 3 weeks comes out in the weekday. So then it's what we experience is only the consequential negativity that comes from these 3 mochen brewing, so to speak. But when the 3 weeks begin and end in Shabbos, since Shabbos redeems the 3 weeks from all its negativity, so all you're left with is just the positivity of the 3 weeks, which is the Gilui, the revelation of God's mind, of the Chabad, of the Chachma Bina Das, which is really the underlying source for the darkness of the 3 weeks, but not in a way of darkness, because Shabbos does away with the darkness. So all you're left with is the positivity and the beginning, so to speak, already of the revelations of these 3 mochim. This is the idea. So that's the content. That's all we're left with. When the 3 weeks begin and end in Shabbos, all you're left with is the pnimius, the getoichan of the 3 weeks, which is the gilui of this great, of the great higher sfirot and attributes which are ordinarily, which were in all of history never really revealed to us. So basically, what are the 3 weeks? According to this, the Messianic era. We're experiencing the Messianic era, because the content of what's going to be when Mashiach comes? Umbala Aretz Deya, the world is going to be flooded with knowledge. The flooding of the world with knowledge is going to become because the Jewish people are going to occupy these 3 lands, which they serve as a physical brain for the 3 minds, for the Chachma Bina Das of God to be revealed, and that's what's going to cause this explosion of knowledge. The Rebbe says that we can connect that with the Parshias that we read in the 3 weeks. What are the Parshias that we read? The 3 Parshias that we read. In other words, we can see this Pnimius, that it's really all about the 3 Moichen being revealed. How do you see that? What are the 3 Parshias we read in the 3 weeks? Actually, it's 4. Pinchas, Matois and Masei, which are usually joined together most years, so they're 1. And then Dvar. In all 3 of them, it talks about taking possession of the land of Eretz Yisroel. And not just taking possession of the land of Eretz Yisroel, but taking possession of the land of Eretz Yisroel in its entirety. So we begin, he says. First he explains how all 3 of them talk about, in general, taking possession of the land. Pashas Pinchas is where the Torah starts talking about how Eretz Yisroel is going to be divided. It says that all the Jewish people that were meant to pass away in the Midbar, the earlier generation, passed away already. The leftover Jews that were alive, were now alive. These people are ready to take possession of the land. And how the division of the land is going to be. It should be done with a lottery. That whole thing. In Parshas Matos, you have a whole story, narration of a story that deals with inheriting the land of Eretz Yisrael. It's the request of the Bnei Gad and the Bnei Reuven, the tribes of Gad and Reuven, where they are requesting that Hashem should give this land to us as an achuzah, as an inheritance. They asked for the eastern side of the Jordan, the lands of Sichon and Og, which we're going to see the significance of that soon. And again, that's in Matos. In Pashas Masei, it speaks about the borders of Eretz Yisrael. The Torah delineates exact borders, describes the borders of Eretz Yisrael. Parshas Devarim, which is the 3rd week, in the beginning of the parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Jewish people that God says to us, you sat already long enough at Mount Sinai, it's time to go take possession of the land. Penu Esulachem, turn around and travel for yourselves. Uboyu Haramoyer, come to the Emirite mountains. V'kol Shchenim, and all to its neighbors. Eretz Aknani, V'Levanon. Go take possession all the way to the great river, the Euphrates River. And it says, it continues, Re'ei, see, I've given to you the land. Go and take possession of it. That's Hashem. And in the end of the parsha, and that's in the beginning. In the beginning it says God's commandment to the Jewish people, which happened actually at the beginning of the 40 years, to go take, before the sin of the spies, when the first generation was supposed to go inherit the land. Hashem says, go in. In the end of the parsha, we actually have the possession of the land in the literal sense, because it speaks over there how Moshe Rabbeinu describes the conquests of the land of Sichon and Og, and the actual giving of those lands by Moshe Rabbeinu to the tribes of Gad and Reuven. So it's interesting. You don't have this anywhere else in the Torah. These parshios speak about the Jewish people taking possession of Eretz Yisrael, which fits very well with the content of what we spoke earlier. I mean, you don't have it anywhere. You have Hashem's promises to Avram that he will give them the land. Hashem's promises to Moshe Rabbeinu right in the Yetzias Mitzrayim, I'll take them out of Mitzrayim, I'll bring them up to the land. You don't have the actual planning and commandment, go take possession. And now, in these parshias, which is the parshias which seem to be the parshias of exile, 3 weeks away from Eretz Yisrael, what do the parshias speak about? Possession of Eretz Yisrael. Because what is it really all about? Possession of Eretz Yisrael. But not just possession of Eretz Yisrael in its limited form, possession in Eretz Yisrael in its most completed and its most wholesome form. When is that going to be? When Mashiach comes. In what sense? We're going to have the entire Eretz Yisrael. So now he says more specifically, in all these 3 parshios, it speaks about the division of Eretz Yisrael, not only on the western side of the Jordan, which is what we call Eretz Yisrael proper, but also on the eastern side of the Jordan, which is the lands of Gad and Reuven, which the taking possession of the lands on the eastern side of the Jordan was somewhat, not completely, but somewhat the beginning of the conquest and the division of the lands of the days of Mashiach. The 3 added lands, the Keni, the Knizi, and the Kadmoni, in the words of Hashem that Hashem promised Avraham Avinu. Keni, Knizi, and Kadmoni, which translated into more what we're more familiar with, the lands of Edom, which is Esav, the lands of Ammon and Moab, the 2 children, the 2 sons of Lot. So these 3 lands, what's the connection of these 3 lands to the Bnei Gad and the Bnei Reuven that took the lands of Sichon and Og? Because it says that when the Jews conquered Sichon and Og, included in the lands of Sichon were lands that once belonged to the Moabites. The Moabim went to war against Sichon, or I don't know who instigated. Sichon conquered the land that once belonged to Moab. Now again, the Jewish people were warned that until Mashiach, we're not going to allow to touch the lands of Moab. Territory of Moab, off limits. But there is one exception. Since Sichon conquered the lands of Moab and it legitimately became the lands of Sichon, it wasn't considered anymore the land of Moab. So now when the Jewish people took possession of it, they had permission to take possession of it, and thereby their initial conquest of Eretz Yisrael had somewhat, a little bit of a connection to the ultimate conquest, in which we will take those 3 lands as well. What does this signify? That in all 3 parshias, you have a taking of possession in the land. When he says in these 3 parshios, I don't know if he means also Parshas Pinchas. He might mean only Matos, Masei, and Dvar. Because I don't know if in Parshas Pinchas it talks about the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven. It starts in Matos. But that's what he means in the 3. But maybe not. Maybe somehow it's Merumas and Pinchas too. I'm not exactly sure. But what do you have? What you see over here is that you have complete Eretz Yisrael. And the significance of that is that it's 7 plus 3, which means the 7 emotions attached to the 3 mochim. That means that we get it all, and we get it all together. And that's the whole idea of Mashiach, that you have the moichin together with the midos. The full construct of divinity in the world manifested. Now everything has to be connected to avoda, meaning in addition to how this plays itself out geographically, what does it mean, the conquest of these lands in avoda? In avoda it means the meaning to us in our daily lives immediately, even before Mashiach comes. What does this mean? This means that a Yid is able to make over here Eretz Yisrael. I guess he means from the fact that we're taking parts that the 3 added countries that are being added to Eretz Yisrael represents the idea of taking from outside of Eretz Yisrael and making Eretz Yisrael. So that's the avodah that is discussed so much, that a Jew can make anywhere Eretz Yisrael, across the entire world. A Yid has the ability to make Eretz Yisrael, and which is also related to the Messianic age. Because in the days of Mashiach, I see the Eretz Yisrael shetespashet b'chol haratzos. Eretz Yisrael will be expanded all over. So when the whole world will be b'kedushas Eretz Yisrael, with the holiness of Eretz Yisrael. So let's just not lose the point. The point over here is that since Shabbos, the 3 weeks began and ended in Shabbos, the negativity has been completely dissolved. There's no dark 3 weeks. All you have is the inner content of the 3 weeks, which the inner content of the 3 weeks is a deeper relationship with God, accessing the 3 moichin, in addition to the 7 midos, helping that manifest in the world. How is that manifest? By the conquest, which is going to be in Mashiach's days, of the conquest of the 10 lands, not just of the 7 lands, which the conquest of the 10 lands is actually connected to the reading of the Torah, which we read during the 3 weeks, and these parshas, which talk all about the conquest of the land and the conquest of all of the land, including the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, which contain within it already the access to the ultimate conquest of Edom, Ammon, and Moab for the completion of all 10 lands. Okay. So now, when Perek Zayin, he says, V'yesh loymar, we can add, it's not his geschmack, because we're already now in Parshas Veschana. Until now we discussed Matis Pinchas, Matis Masei Devarim. Now we're coming, this week is already Parshas Veschana. So the Rebbe says, the revelation of Mashiach that is shaychus, particularly to Shabbos Tisha B'Av, and especially the latter part of Shabbos afternoon, Mincha time, which, as we said before, Mincha, the afternoon of Tisha B'Av, is the time in Tisha B'Av itself when Moshiach's energy is dominating. That's why, as we learned earlier, that's when you say Nachem already, the morning lightens up, and yeah. So the Rebbe says the inyan of Moshiach shining on this Shabbos can be seen very strongly in the reading of the Torah, which we read by Shabbos by Mincha. In other words, he explained how it's connected to Shabbos Devarim, but even more by Shabbos by Mincha. What's by Shabbos by Mincha? We know that every Shabbos in the morning we read the past week's parsha, and by Mincha Shabbos we start already reading the next parsha. So the parsha is Parshas Veschana. What's the unique connection of Parshas Veschana to the revelation of Moshiach? Now the Rebbe says very simple. Parshas Veschana opens up with Moshe Rabbeinu's prayer. Moshe Rabbeinu is davening, and it's a hard thing to read, because you're reading how Moshe Rabbeinu is describing to us the intense prayers that he prayed and prayed, and he was begging and pleading with God that God should revoke his decree forbidding Moshe to go into Eretz Yisrael. And Moshe is just crying and begging, and God slams the lid in Moshe's face, and he says, no, be quiet, don't even talk to me about it anymore, you're not going. Mama's heart-wrenching. But the Rebbe says a simple question. Why, if Moshe Rabbeinu's prayer was not accepted and Hashem did not yield to Moshe's prayer, so then this becomes a story of the past, a story of an unfulfilled prayer, which is not something that we want to use as a lesson. What's our lesson? What are we going to learn from this? We're going to learn from this that prayers go unanswered. What's the eternal lesson? If the Torah puts it, the Torah is a permanent lesson for us, for our behavior. What can possibly be the lesson that we're going to learn by Moshe Rabbeinu failing in his prayer? If anything, it can be depressing. If Moshe Rabbeinu failed in his prayer, then why should I pray? So the Rebbe says you have to say that there's a different story over here. We're not reading the story. We have to look much deeper into the story. The depth of the story is that chas v'shalom, God forbid to say that God, as I mentioned earlier, slammed the door of Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe's prayer is not answered. If the prayer of any tzaddik has to go answered, especially since we know even more than that a tzaddik has so much power that he can decree, tzaddik goyzer HaKadosh Baruch Hu Makayim, the tzaddik decrees, and the Eibishter fulfills what the tzaddik decrees. So it says in Medrash Tanchuma. And that's already any tzaddik. How much more so the tefillah of Moshe Rabbeinu. And by Moshe Rabbeinu particularly, we know that Moshe Rabbeinu is nitzchiyas. That means there's no such a thing as Moshe attempts something and it gets aborted. Moshe is eternal, everything about him. Even his actions are eternal. That's why we know that the Mishkan could not be destroyed. It was disassembled, but it was never destroyed. The Mishkan can't be destroyed because the hands of Moshe Rabbeinu, the Ma'aseh Yado of Moshe is nitzchi. If the actions of Moshe is nitzchi, how much more so the prayer? What's the difference between an action and a prayer? Action is, as we know in Chassidus, that there is machshava, dibur, and ma'isa. Ma'isa, action, thought, speech, and action. Action carries the least energy of the soul, the most minuscule. So if there is only a tiny little bit of Moshe, since Moshe is nitzchi, is Moshe emes, he's truth, and truth doesn't end, truth cannot change, and therefore even the tiny little bit of DNA of Moshe, he puts himself into something that he does that has to last forever. How much more so Moshe's speech and Moshe's thought and Moshe's inner heart, prayers of your essence, of your deepest place. So for sure, if Moshe is investing so much, for sure it has to last. It couldn't be that the prayer ended. So therefore the Rebbe says, the eschanon is a permanent thing. It's continuing, it's burrowing through continuously throughout time. Moshe Rabbeinu's prayer continues right now. And Moshe is davening and davening and davening. Whether he's davening now, his prayer that he davened then is as potent and as strong, and it's continuing. And if it wasn't fulfilled for whatever reason, it could not have been fulfilled at his time when he was asking Hashem to annul the decree and allow him into Eretz Yisrael. Doesn't mean that the prayer was cast into the garbage, chas v'shalom. The prayer continues, and it will be fulfilled at a later time. It will come to fruition, this prayer that Moshe will come into Eretz Yisrael. When will it be fulfilled that Moshe will come to Eretz Yisrael? Well, Moshe Rabbeinu is also the soul of Mashiach. So Moshe Rabbeinu's prayer was really the prayer to let Mashiach bring the Jewish people into Eretz Yisrael, because Moshe is Goyal Yisha, Goyal Lach, it's one prayer. So if you think about something, you know what happened? What did the Rebbe do right now? Only the Rebbe has that ability to sharpen things. What's Ve'eschanon? Ve'eschanon is the cry of Ad Mosai. The Ve'eschanon is the cry for Mashiach to be successful, for Mashiach to come already. Moshe will go into Eretz Yisrael. He will go in incarnated in Mashiach. Or Moshe can go in both, as the power of Mashiach and as Moshe Rabbeinu individually as well, in his body, because of the B'tchias HaMesim, Moshe Rabbeinu in his body, and he will bring his generation with him, as we're soon going to see as well. And he will come in. So it's not a wasted prayer, chas v'shalom. If we would have merited, this is what the Rebbe says, if we would have merited, then the tefillah of Moshe Rabbeinu would have been fulfilled already. 3,600 years ago, I don't know how long it was, close to 4,000 years ago. And Moshe would have brought them into Eretz Yisrael. He would have built the Beis Hamikdash, and then that Beis Hamikdash would have been already the Beis Hamikdash Nitzchi, and it would have lasted forever. For whatever reason, the Rebbe says the tefillah of Moshe was not fulfilled at that time, because of the decree that Moshe needed to stay with the Jewish people in the Midbar, as we're soon going to see. But since it's the tefillah of Moshe, and we know that's not stam prayer, it wasn't one prayer, it was 515 prayers, the gematria of the word Ve'eschana. For sure this prayer is going to be fulfilled at a later time. When? Megula Amitis, as he says, through Mashiach Tzidkenu. Mashiach is the Goel Rishon, who is the Goel Achrein, and he's going to bring all the Jewish people into Eretz Yisrael in a geula that there won't be a galus anymore in the building of the third Beis Hamikdash Bayis Nitzchi. So therefore, when you read Ve'eschana, it's Moshe Rabbeinu pleading that the leader of the generation, who is Moshe, to bring the Jewish people into Eretz Yisrael. Then you have the connection to Mashiach being born on Tisha B'Av. It's Mashiach with Moshe Rabbeinu's prayer, Moshe Rabbeinu routing for him, praying for him, pleading for him that he should be successful. Mezen Numtza, the Rebbe says, comes out of this, that the tefillah of Moshe Rabbeinu is continuous forever, it's having its effect at a later time. Okay. So what's the Hira? So here's this. The Rebbe learns out from this an incredible Hira, an incredible directive to us, to each and every one of us, in all the generations. When Moshe Rabbeinu started his prayer, what did he say? He said to the Eibishter, you began showing your servant that it's up to me. Moshe Rabbeinu makes a very important statement at the beginning of his, when he tells us about his prayer. He says to Hashem, you taught me how relentless to be in my prayer. Because you taught me how powerful my prayer is. Moshe Rabbeinu would have never ever have thought that he has the power to change things in such a way. Why? He said, by the story of the Egel, by the story of the golden calf, this the Gemara says this in Masechtas Brachas, that in the story when the Egel happened, Moshe Rabbeinu felt it was all over. He saw that the Jewish people did such a grave sin, and God was so upset, he thought it was all over. But then Hashem coaxed him into praying, because Hashem said to him, Ata hanicha li, let go of me, and I'm going to destroy them. The fact that Hashem said to him, let go of me, Moshe heard that. He perked up when he heard that. He said, I should let go, let you do it. It's a sign that I can stop it. That means I can pray and annul the decree. So you've taught me that it's up to me, the power of prayer. That's one thing it says in the beginning of the parasha. The other thing it says at the beginning of the prayer Rashi brings, that if Hashem will consent to Moshe Rabbeinu, if Moshe Rabbeinu will nudge and beg and plead and get God to change his mind, no one else can stop, because it's not like a regular king in which he has all kinds, you see what's going on over here, the power the president has, every single thing he wants to do, he gets thwarted by So regular people, they don't have the power. It's divided power. But by you, the Eibishter, your power is infinite, and no one can stop you. And that's the basis for Moshe Rabbeinu's prayer. So what does this teach us? This teaches us that even though Moshe Rabbeinu knew of the Gezerah, all right? He knew that there is a Gezerah. It was a decree. And Hashem had, and a decree of God is a decree of God. It's easy to say, why do we sometimes feel that we're helpless? Why do we sometimes feel that we can't do anything? Because we know that the Golus is a decree, and whenever the Yibishter will decide, it's time to end the Golus. The Rebbe fought, and wanted us to fight. But sometimes we feel, who are we to fight? sometimes we feel, who are we to fight? Moshe Rabbeinu knew of the Gezerah, but he knew that since what are we talking about? We're not talking about, let me go swimming in the swimming pool. He was talking about going into Eretz Yisroel. He's talking about bringing the Geula for all the Jewish people. So he's going to do whatever he can. Whatever he can. Everything that's dependent on him. To daven and to daven again. How many times? 515 prayers. Or, as he explains according to Chassidus, what it means that Moshe Rabbeinu prayed 515 times means he prayed such a prayer that permeated the entirety of all of existence. How does that, the entirety of all of existence, hinted to in 515? So the Rebbe says from the Tzemach Tzedek that there are 15 spaces of 500 years. Because the Gemara says between here and the sky is a duration of 500 years. And between the first sky and the thickness of the rakia, the first rakia is 500 years. And then between the first rakia and the second rakia and the second firmament is also a distance of 500 years. And the second firmament itself, 500 years. So if you count 7 skies with the spaces between, it comes out 14, and then one more. Altogether, it's 15 times 500. Moshe Rabbeinu's prayer was so intense that it gripped, it permeated. It's almost as if all of existence was praying with him. On every level, on every dimension of existence. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu pray such an intense prayer? Because he needed to do everything that's dependent on him. Maybe, in other words, he knew there's a decree. He knew that there's a divine decree. Hashem decided. But he's going to fight. That's it. You say, going to fight City Hall? Yes, he's going to fight City Hall. Because he thought that perhaps, maybe, he will affect the Eibishter, that Hashem should have known the decree, and he will bring the Jewish people into Eretz Yisrael. And here the Rebbe adds an incredible chidush. He says, and again, how would the Rebbe say this? It's hard to imagine. Moshe Rabbeinu says in the parasha that Hashem told him, Ravlach, quiet, enough. I don't want to hear another word from you. Stop it. You prayed enough? Stop. So the Rebbe says, I highly doubt that Moshe Rabbeinu listened to Hashem when Hashem told him to stop. It's most probable that Moshe Rabbeinu continued pushing the request. Even at why? That's a chutzpah. How can he? God told him to be quiet. He has to listen. Sages say, everything the owner of the house tells you to do, you have to listen to, besides when he tells you to leave. Chutz mitzeh. So to kick you out, no. So who's the real balabais? The owner of the house is God. If God tells you to stop praying, to leave, you don't have to listen. In this sense, even though the Eibishter told him, don't speak to me anymore, it makes sense to say that Moshe Rabbeinu risked everything and he continued to plead and to beg and that he should be able to go into Eretz Yisrael. But it's amazing when the Rebbe is saying this, he says how Moshe Rabbeinu was pushing the envelope, even in a place that he put himself in danger, but only putting himself in danger, not chas v'shalom risking the well-being of anybody else. Hashem had decreed that Yeshua should bring the Jewish people to Eretz Yisrael. So Moshe Rabbeinu's request that he should go in had to be in a way that Moshe Rabbeinu was careful that it should not step on Yeshua Bin's toes. How that's possible? That Moshe should go in, but still Yeshua would be the people taken. Maybe Moshe would be the second in command. Maybe he would be, I don't know how he can finagle this. But the Rebbe, you see the sensitivity. Yeah, you want to go in, but hold it. That by you going in, you're hurting Yeshua's great. This was going to be Yeshua's great accomplishment. And it says in a way that it would take care that Yeshua would not get hurt. But I'll kupon him. What do you see? Now, what's the real problem over here? The real problem over here was not so much regarding Moshe Rabbeinu. Because even if Moshe Rabbeinu was able to effect that God should let him in, since Moshe Rabbeinu, and the Rebbe says he definitely was able to effect this. Since any tzaddik's prayer is answered, Moshe was able to effect it. He should be able to that Hashem should let him in. But since Moshe Rabbeinu was a true shepherd, he was a real Rebbe, and he was a true teacher of the Jewish people of Torah, he would not go out of exile leaving his people behind. Again, you had an entire generation that died in the desert. And Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was not going to go himself and leave them behind. So even if he could have gotten a green light to go himself, he would not have relented until he gets everybody else in. And the Rebbe learns it out from a halacha. The halacha is that when a teacher goes to exile, the students have to be with their teacher. You can't be chas v'sholem teacherless. You can't be rebellious. Students must be with their teacher. That's a halacha. How do you see that? If a teacher of Torah accidentally takes the life of another human being, and the teacher is then sent into exile, into Golus, the halacha is that his entire yeshiva gets sent along with him. That's it. You send the entire yeshiva into exile. They have to stay there until the Kohen Gadol dies. Because students need their Rebbe, they need their teacher. So if that's true about exile, that students will follow a teacher even into exile, it has to be the other way around. If the students are in exile and the teacher cannot leave the exile and leave them behind in exile. If we say that when they're outside, we're free people, we put them into exile so that they should be with their teacher. Better to be with their teacher in exile than to be free roaming people outside. How much more so is that we're not going to pluck the teacher out of exile and leave the students behind. So there's not even you shouldn't even entertain the thought that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to just rescue himself and go into Eretz Yisrael, leaving his people behind. For sure, Moshe Rabbeinu was demanding and wanting to bring everybody in with him. So you have to say that Moshe's tefillah to go into Eretz Yisrael included in it, even though it doesn't say so explicitly in the pasuk, but that they should grant all the Jews that they should all be able to go in. Obviously, they died already by the time he was doing this prayer. So it means that that Moshe Rabbeinu was praying that they should go in the resurrection. They should go in the ultimate Geulah. So what does this all teach us? What's the teaching? What this is teaching us is that we're supposed to derive from here that just like Moshe Rabbeinu knew and got a heads up from God that it's up to him, and therefore he pushed and pushed and pushed, and even when Hashem told him stop it, he still continued pushing it. In other words, fighting for Mashiach and screaming and demanding is something that we are supposed to do relentlessly. So if Moshe Rabbeinu did this, that means consequently the leaders of all generations have to do this. The continuation of Moshe Rabbeinu that's in all generations, as we know the leader of every generation is Moshe. And the Rebbe says more, the Moshe Rabbeinu that's in every Jew, I and you and each and every one of us have a Moshe Rabbeinu. And from that place inside of us, we have to demand and cry out that notwithstanding how many times we davened, and notwithstanding how many times it seems like we were told no, because Mashiach didn't come, we daven again, and we bang down the door again, and we don't stop it, and we keep on pushing and banging and banging and banging. Tzrichem shuv v'shuv li'yispalel levakish ma'HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we need to request continuously ad masai. That's what we're learning out from this. And it's definite, without a shadow of a doubt, that the tefillah and the bakasha are answered instantly in a manner of a gift, meaning way beyond all that we've done for it. God responds, as it's called, in a manner of the eschana. The eschana also means matnas chinam. And therefore the geula amitis v'ashleima will come immediately through Mashiach Tzidkeinu, who is also Moshe Rabbeinu, as we said earlier. The first Redeemer was the last Redeemer. And all the Jewish people go to Eretz Yisroel in the eternal redemption. The Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi comes down, which is ready, above already. It's already all completed. It will descend. We will have a complete Giyur. So now let's do very quickly, very important Siftes. So in this idea, the Rebbe says, becomes intensified when we're staying. In other words, this is true about every Shabbos Tisha B'Av. Particularly now that Rebbe is connected, especially to that time, to the time of Shabbos Tisha B'Av Tafshin Nun Aleph, and to that special Fabrengen. He says, number one, it becomes intensified because of the event that's taking place right now. Why? He says the place that we're in right now is very similar to the third Beis HaMikdash, because it's a holy place and it's dedicated to three elements of holiness. Torah, it's a place where Torah is taught. 770 is a place where a lot of Torah was taught. It's a place of davening, it's a shul. And it's a place of Gemilas Chasadim, a place where a lot of mitzvahs are done, a lot of acts of kindness are done, and people take upon themselves hachlotis to do kindness. And it's particularly, that you can find many places that have all three. It's the house of the previous Rebbe, who is the Moshe of the generation. So that adds, since we're emphasizing so much the Moshe power, so the Moshe of the generation, since this is his place, and this is similar and a preparation for the third Beis HaMikdash, which is also a triple Beis HaMikdash. It's a Beis Tefillah, it's a place of davening. It's a place of the Torah, because the Sanhedrin sits in the Beis HaMikdash, and it's a place of Gemilas Chasadim, which is related to the bringing of Karbanos. How Karbanos is related to Gemilas Chasadim, he already puts in the footnote over here. Now, to add to this, in this triple place that we're in, that's because we're in this holy place, so it has extra potency. In addition to this, there are so many Jews that are packed together in this place. Many, lots of Yidden. So we have Beroivam Hadras Melech. The beauty of the king is emphasized when there's a lot of people. In addition to this, that every single Jew individually is a balabayas on all of existence, including on himself. And he brings the idea of that, because a Yid, it says, Adam ki yakrev mikem. When a Yid brings a carbon from himself, he brings himself closer to God. Through him, he elevates all elements of creation. Doimin sameach chaim medaber. He gets elevated. How much more so? That's even if one Jew. How much more so that there's so many Jews together, and that everybody's in a state of unity. That the love and the unity nullifies the exile. Saying, all this is creating the perfect chemistry, the perfect setting for the Geula to happen. So since we're all together with love and in Achdus, so that's removing the cause of the Golus, which is the lack of unity. Take it from the Yad Mamish, Ba'agayula, so therefore the Geula can come instantly. Ubefrat, and more specifically. So that's because of the place. Now we add something else. He says also because the time is such an opportune time, that it's Shabbos Tisha B'Av, at the time of Tfilas Mincha, when Mashiach's neshama is in a very, very heightened state. And in which year is it? It's in the year of Tafshin Nun Aleph, which stands for Shnas Harenu Neflois, I will see wonders. Which wonders are we referring to? The wonders of the future redemption. So from all of this, it's understood that this time and this place, it's time and space, how much we spoke about time and space yesterday. It's the time and space that is the most fitting for Bias HaMashiach. And here the Rebbe says some very, very powerful words. He says, Bepashtus, it's simple. All of this creates such a powerful presentation
is that right now it's appropriate that what? That a yid, that means any yid, when it says a yid, it means all of us, every single yid, should have and could have, and therefore a yid believes. A yid, the Rebbe is even just stating it as a fact. A Jew believes. Hear this. Again, because of all this happening, a Jew has powerful emunah, perfect faith, that Mashiach Tzidkenu, perfect faith, emunah shalem, that what? That Mashiach Tzidkenu. Who is that? And here the Rebbe emphasizes not a fairy tale Mashiach, but a Mashiach Tzidkenu who is the Rebbe brings the Rambam, halachic Mashiach. That is a king from the household of David, who studies Torah and is Isaac and mitzvahs. And Moshiach Tzidkenu, who is Isaac b'Torah, who is Melech mebeis David, Hoige b'Torah v'Isaac and mitzvahs. And as Moshiach Vadai, as definite Moshiach, walks in right now into this shul, and he Yaveh v'Yigalenu, and he brings the Geula right now, and he takes us to Eretz Yisroel. So a Yid has perfect emunah that literally any second, right now, on this Shabbos, Mashiach Tzidkenu will walk in and take all the Jewish people to Eretz Yisrael, to the Geula. Now the Rebbe adds over here, Mashiach Tzidkenu, who is a Melech Mibeis David, who is Isaac b'Torah b'mitzvahs, and as already established the status of Mashiach Vada. Because we know in Rambam, there's two stages for Mashiach. There is the assumed Mashiach. That means when someone did certain things in which we can halachically qualify him as Becheskas Mashiach, that we can assume. And assuming is not just a silly assumption, it's a very serious halachic criteria. We can assume someone is going to be Mashiach. But we can't yet halachically claim with 100% halachic certainty that he is the for sure Mashiach. When Mashiach completes a few more things that he needs to do, there's a certain point when he becomes unquestionable, undisputably, halachically Mashiach. And that's called Mashiach Vada. So the Rebbe says, a Yid has emunah, that right now Mashiach walks into the room, and already in the status of Mashiach Vadai, and here the Rebbe says in parentheses, how does he have established that he is Mashiach Vadai? So the Rebbe brings what the Rambam says. Through this, that he was already successful in all the things that he needs to do, and he builds the Beis HaMikdash, and he gathers the Jewish people together. So Mashiach, as Mashiach Vadai, who has done all these things, walks now into the room, and it takes us to Eretz Yisrael. Who Melech b'nei Yisrael amongst the Jewish people to Eretz HaKodesh, Yishlaim HaKodesh, Lahar HaKodesh, LaBeis HaMikdash HaShlish. And all this happens now. A Yid has emunah that all this is happening now. I'm being barraged with people sending me this quote, this piece, and deriving and wanting, I guess, to hear my opinion. I don't know why my opinion is so important, but requesting and kind of pushing very strong that to say that from here the Rebbe said that he is Mashiach Vadai already. I wish I can say that. I want Mashiach Vadai and I want the Geula. I don't see that over here. I think when we're pushing something too much and we don't, in this paragraph I don't see that. The Rebbe says, a Yid hat Amunah. A Yid is Amunah that Mashiach will walk in now and take us how to go. It's like the Rebbe said all the years. That a Yid believes, Megaleit right now, that through the window, through the door, Mashiach will walk in and he will take the Jewish people. In the years of 1990, 1991, the Rebbe was more elaborate when he spoke about Mashiach. That means already defining Mashiach, who Mashiach is. He's Melech Mebeis David, Hoige B'Torah, yes. And that the Rebbe did indicate many times that Nasi Dareinu is already Oisik B'Torah and so on and so forth. The Rebbe is not, again, I'm not seeing over here the Rebbe saying that Moshe, that he has already established. He says, how is this Mashiach that's going to walk in right now gonna have established himself as Mashiach Vadai through this that he was Matzliach and he built the Beis HaMikdash and he was Mekabes Nitchei Yisroel. Now all of that Rebbe is saying, we have a one, it could happen in a split second. Because in a split second, Mashiach can walk in, and that's very same. Just like he can pick all the Jewish people up with clouds and take them to Yisroel, he can make it happen that the Beis HaMikdash comes down immediately. So he has already proven that there is a Beis HaMikdash, and he was Matzliach already, and he was Mekabes Nitchei Yisroel. The Rebbe is saying that's our emunah of what can happen any second. And then later in the Sikha, the Rebbe goes on to say, if Chas v'Shalom it doesn't happen, but he's begging and hoping that we have a munah, that a Yid has a munah, this should happen, could happen at any second. I think saying that is taking it completely out of context. Now, I know you want to base this because you want to say that being that in the base Rabbeinu Shebabavel Sikha, the Rebbe says over there, the Yashloimar, another Pirush, when it says Yivne Beis HaMikdash b'Mekoymoi, it means that Mashiach builds a Beis HaKnesses in his land, in his city. So first of all, when the Rebbe said this Sikha, the Rebbe didn't yet give us Beis Rabbeinu Shebabavel. He already said the seeds of Beis Rabbeinu Shebabavel, Chav Ches Sivan. But over there, the Rebbe says that the only Chiddush the Rebbe said over there is that the Friediger Rebbe could be poil. Then he has a right to demand that the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi should come down first in Crown Heights. First come down in 770, and from there it will go to Eretz Yisrael. Beis HaMikdash. Over there, the Rebbe didn't say yet that the Yivne Beis HaMikdash is the building of the Beis HaMikdash. So to be medayik over here, Sha'asav Etzliach Ubana Mikdash b'Mekoymoi, that the Rebbe means that happened already, and all that it is that we need to believe it, and the moment we believe it, it happened already, and we have to believe that it's Mashiach Vadai, even if al pi halacha we cannot say. When I say al pi halacha, I mean Rambam's halacha of what characterizes Mashiach Vadai. That's the way I see it, completely out of context. And even in Beis Rabbeinu Shebabavel, what I see is definite in the Sikha. The Rebbe is saying that Mashiach operates with the Jewish people in the Zman of Galus. When the time of Geula comes, and what does he do when he operates amongst the Jewish people in the time of Galus? Is he builds a Beis HaKnesses. And that's the Beis HaMikdash during the Zman of Galus. When the time of the Geula comes, the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi will be enclosed in over there, and then it will go to Eretz Yisrael. So, I think it's completely out of context to say that the Rebbe is saying that Pshat in the Rambam of Yivne Beis HaMikdash b'Mekoymoi means to establish Mashiach Vadai is to say that he builds a Beis HaMikdash in Chutz L'Yaretz b'Mekoymoi in his place. That's taking the mashmois of the Rambam completely out of context. What the Rebbe is saying is that since he's established that what? That Mashiach also builds a Makom HaMikdash b'Mekoymoi in his place, And the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi, before it will go Limekoimoi over there in the Har Habayis, it will first come down over here and then it will go over here. So Yesh Loima, that Merumiz in the Rambam hinted to, in Bederech Remez, in the Rambam, is also the idea that he builds first the Beis Hamikdash Limekoimoi. But to go and say that just by doing that he has a halachic Rambam status of Mashiach Vadai, I'm not lacking in my messianism and in my belief that the Rebbe said about himself that he's Mashiach and that he has already revealed himself and all that. I've discussed it all the time. But to go overboard and to make claims, and based on that to claim that we don't have to fast on Tisha B'Av, and that the Giyul is fully here, and it's just a switch in our mind, I believe that that's, let's just say, treading in uncharted waters. Until you're not going to bring me serious Rabbanim Chabad. I'm not looking for, my Yatzes Gedela Atayra to be maskim to this, then they haven't yet touched this entire subject. But bring me serious Rabbanei Chabad. Don't kratz me yois Rabbanim that I've never heard of. Serious Rabbanei Chabad who will tell me that this is the simple pshat and that's how Mashiach Vadai is established, that that's what the Rebbe meant. And come out with a serious psak halacha, not because of Corona, but because of that the fasts are cancelled. Other than that, to go and do this, I think is irresponsible, reckless, dangerous, and not helping the cause. Let's just put it this way. Thought it's very important to clarify that, because I seem to have been the so many people are like sending me that as if I have to paskin this psak. I don't see it. I don't see it over here. I don't have anything against anybody, chas v'shalom. I mean, I'm happy that people are so enthused about the Geyulah and we're so frustrated. I want to do away with Tisha B'Av. I want to do away with Tisha B'Av. No one likes Tisha B'Av. I don't want. But my hands are bound. My hands are bound by a Shulchan Aruch. A Jew has to follow the Shulchan Aruch. The moment we start making monkey business just because we thought that this, I don't see it over here. I don't see that the Rebbe says that that's such a far stretch. The Rebbe says that Yid believes that Mashiach will walk in now. And Mashiach, when he will walk in now, will be already Mashiach Vadai. How? Because he will build the Beis Hamikdash. When? He didn't do it yet, he'll do it that second. Especially since the Rebbe says it's already finished from above, it just has to come down. If it will come down in 770 and instantly will fly to Eretz Yisroel, and I think by the time if the Beis Hamikdash is already in 770, we can cancel Tisha B'Av already. We're already close enough to Mashiach Vadai, or B'Mekoimai maybe requires till it's B'Mekoimai. Okay. Either way, but that's what the Rebbe is talking about. Not that a Yid believes that we already built the Beis Hamikdash B'Mekoimai. I'm not minimizing that the Rebbe leaves room for that idea in Beis Rabbeinu Shebabama. But even over there, it's not changing the halacha as everybody understood it for all the years. And the Rebbe says, no, Mekoimai means in Brooklyn. The Rebbe says over here is Mirum, that one of the Pa'ulas of Mashiach is that we will also build a kind of a keli, a Beis Hamikdash over here, which is a mini Beis Hamikdash, which will be the facilitator for the greater Beis Hamikdash, which will later transport Mekoimai. Now, Bepashtus Mekoimai, of course, is Beis Hamikdash Ashlishi, the Yerushalayim. I believe you have to be very careful before you go ahead and start everything that I'm trying to see from the Zichas and say from the Zichas are all things that are clear and solid and proven from many, many, many places, from many angles. This seems to be, to me,
as Wildereit. Again, I love all the Yidden that are trying to say this, because I would wish it to be legit, and I would wish that I can also say Mashiach Vada, and we don't have to fast, and Mashiach is here already, and everything is great. In general, let me continue on this, because it's important, again, because the question has been brought up. I do believe that to a certain degree, and to a very great degree, it's in our own minds in where we bring Mashiach. Because the moment we start living as if Mashiach is here already, and we live in Geula and so on and so forth, then we're really in Yemaisa Mashiach. The Rebbe says we are living already in the Aschalas of Yemaisa Mashiach, and we can start living that. And when we start doing that, Geula happens all around us. But I also believe, maybe I'm wrong, that it's not just dependent on that. There is going to be a climactic event of Mashiach arriving. And it's going to be that climactic event that's going to shake the world and kick the entire world into the Giyul. So yes, it's true. In order to get to that stage, there has to be perhaps a critical mass. And the critical mass maybe doesn't have to be, millions of Jews. It can be, more and more and more people catching on to the idea that Mashiach is very, very much already real in the world, and we can live in Geula consciousness. As that happens, we create it, that becomes more begilui, more revealed, and creates the environment for the. But this whole notion that we don't have to daven anymore for Mashiach, and we don't, and that from above everything was done already, and the Rebbe already is fully revealed, and Mashiach Vada is here already, and we're already all there, and we just have to wake up to this reality, and that's all, and there won't be any more, and we're not waiting, and we're not davening, and we're not screaming Ad Masay for a certain thing to crack, I think is wrong. I think there's legitimacy to the idea that too, living with Mashiach and Geula, brings and reveals and actualizes it. But both things have to happen. Our avodah from below has to be met by the powerful revelation from above that is going to be involved with Mashiach's coming. Foremost as that Mashiach should walk through the door as a bus of Adam, but that we should be able to see him. And for that we're crying Ad Masay. So everything, when it gets taken to too of an extreme, we need to be careful. That's all. Okay. So the main thing is the Gilui from Mashiach Tzedkenu. The Hayra that Rebbe keeps on saying further in the Fabrengen is that we should, in addition to the Amunah that we have that Mashiach will come immediately, the Rebbe says if Chas v'Sholom it takes a little longer, that we should celebrate and make siyumim and siyum b'mishpati podeh, a lot of tzedakah and a lot of celebrations, Fabrengens, and we should continue that until the 15th of Av. It should be non-stop every day siyumim, because b'mishpat is still learning Torah, and tzedakah. We should continue doing that again and again and again, and not stop until Chamashas Av. May the Eibush to help that we should already have the full Geula and way before Chamashas Av. Like the Rebbe says, Yiratzin, that even before Chamashas Av, even the days before that, and immediately the Geula should come already, and then we'll be able to have L'mayla. It's going to be greater than everything he says, than the Shalosh Regalim. It's going to be greater than Purim, and it's going to be even a greater Simcha than Simchas Torah. Okay. And it's interesting. After everything, the Rebbe says that Davar Yechidi Shalom Machakamu, that a Yid should give Ein Megeshrai. So it's all these things together. It's the Amunah that he's here, the Amunah that any second we're going to have to fill his galos, the cry Ad Masay, this making seams. It's working on all. It's not like one thing. Just it's alles on. I mean, we merit And finally, the fruits of our labors should be revealed. We should have the happiest Tisha B'Av.